Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Whether you are a brand new visitor who is excited to talk about jump chains with someone else who does and is a part of jump chains and jump chain communities, or you are someone who's been here 1,000 times and you are curious as to what sort of little variety event or thing we're going to be talking about today, I'm so excited to see you. My name is Luciano, and today we are going to be talking about jump chains broadly and also taking a look at a specific jump known as the generic first jump by Ursine the Mad Bear. This is, as far as I can tell, the most recent version, and in this particular video I'm hoping to introduce readers to the different sections of a jump dock that they may see. For those of you who do not know, a jump chain is a type of choose-your-own-adventure in which a player character known as a jumper goes from setting to setting, most often fictional famous settings, but also sometimes original settings, or settings that are not original but are not quite as well known as, say, Pokemon or Supernatural or Dragon Ball Z, or that kind of thing. Over the course of their adventures, they will visit different settings, usually for a decade, though not always for a decade. It can be for as short as a few days or for as long as a few centuries. They will pick up powers, they will pick up friends, they'll gain new skills, new memories, new items, and eventually they will attempt to acquire a spark. We are going to gradually, over the course of a long-term video series, talk about different jump docks, which are the actual individual choose-your-own-adventures that are used as part of a broader choose-your-own-adventure, which is the jump chain itself, to show people what different fictional settings are like, and also to teach people about how cool this hobby can be. I myself am a jump maker, and I have lots of experience in this community. I'm very excited to be here chatting with you guys, and also just having a grand old time. Been in this particular screen and in this part of the jump dock for a nice little bit now, but if at any point you would like to take a look at the jump dock yourself, I'm going to be including a link to it in the description of this video. And also, if you like the video and want to continue playing it while you are reading it, you definitely can, or you can just take a beat to pause it so that way you can make sure that there's nothing that you miss. This is the intro blurb. It is something that is very commonplace in nearly all jump docks. Most of them do not throw you immediately into the fire. One of the big things that you can see here is that you can see a handful of ways that this particular jump is a little bit unique. One of the big areas worth mentioning as far as the uniqueness of this jump dock goes is this section right here. Instead of visiting one continuous setting for a decade, which is the standard jump length, you are going to be, assuming that this is your first jump, you are going to be thrown into 10 different settings, each of which will last for a year. This is also the first time that some people will be seeing the term choice points. Choice points are the standard currency that jumpers will get at the beginning of each of their jumps. A jump is typically scattered into a number of different phases. The first phase is the build phase for most standard jumpers, wherein they get to select their perks, their items, buy any companion tokens or potentially any companions, which they can use to gain allies and friends that will follow them along their chain, and will also have the ability to buy perks themselves. We will be talking about a lot of those different things in their own individual videos, but as you can see, this particular jump is a very fascinating first one to go over because of the number of ways that it differs from different jumps. One of the biggest ways that it differs is this next paragraph right here. Because of the tutorial nature of this jump, dying here will not end your chain as it normally would, or it would not activate a 1-up as it normally would. Instead, you will have the ability to move on to the next jump or trying it again. And thankfully, if you already survived for a year in a particular level, you do not have to do that level again. You can instead just go to the level where you died, or you can try a different level that you have not already been in, so that way you can continue and you can hopefully get to keep all of the stuff that you got. And of course, I'm using you in reference to the actual player character as opposed to you, the person doing the choose your own adventure on a meta level. Hello, we have now reached the level selection part of the video and the jump dock itself. This particular jump dock is a very important section, although it is worth noting that typically, instead of seeing a level selection bit like this, you would see a starting location toggle. And in the starting location toggle, you would be selecting where it is that your jumper starts off in the setting of wherever it is that they are going. So if you are going to a Harry Potter jump, you could choose to start off, or you would have the ability to get lucky and potentially start off in Hogwarts and one of the other wizarding schools in the United States, depending on the jump, things like that. Due to the nature of this particular jump, you are able to select the order that your jumper visits levels in, and you are also able to select the areas and settings that they are going to. A bit of important consideration here is that this is a great opportunity for a jumper who is not genre savvy to become acquainted with the tropes and common things they might see in different types of settings, and also for a chance for them to get to see what it is like to actually live in that kind of setting as a real person, as opposed to seeing it through a character's eyes in some particular sort of way. The different 10 levels that exist in this particular jump that your jumper will be visiting are Slice of Life, Survival, Horror, Military, Modern Adventure, Superhero, Modern Occult, Historical / some variation of historical, Fantasy, and Science Fiction. You can also get to see examples of different types of settings they could visit. In almost every case, these are areas that actually already have jumps that they could use as a sort of frame of reference, or more specifically, that you, the author, could use as a frame of reference for the sort of things they might encounter. For example, the Dresden Files is a book series. Harry Potter is a book series. Both of those have jump docks that already exist, that if you've never read the actual books themselves, you could go and you could use them to see what that specific setting is like in advance, and to think about the sort of challenges that your jumper might experience even living in such settings for even as little as a year. Now that we are moving at a nice little bit, the next two sections we'll be able to talk about fairly quickly. The age and gender section is, in fact, a very commonplace section in most jump docks, as in most jump docks, people will often roll a dice to see their character's age and gender, although oftentimes there's variables depending on the origins that someone chooses. But in this particular jump dock, Ursine decided to make it completely up to the jumper themselves, or the jump author themselves. You are whatever gender you want to be and whatever age you want to be, though your age may experience some level of alteration to fit the identity granted by a specific level that you are in, such as if you are in a fantasy world as an elf, it may not make that much sense for you to be a 19-year-old elf, as in the particular setting you are in, a 19-year-old elf might be considered a child, practically just a toddler. Origin is a very important term in the context of a jump chain, and origin refers to the player character's background and identity in the setting that they are in. Most jumps offer origins, although lately there has been a recent trend that has been particularly popular over on the Reddit jump chain community that was initially heralded by a jump maker named Burkus, who is a fantastic jump maker and a buddy of mine, who created what is known as the supermarket / grocery store style, wherein you do not pick an origin and instead you're able to just select perks, and you have a set of discounts that are referred to as discount tokens that you can use to lower the price of a perk, because one of the big powers of an origin from a meta point of view is that they dictate the sort of discounts that you will be getting. In this particular jump, you are able to get 4 different types of origins, and in most jumps you will only be selecting 1 or occasionally 2 different identities / origins, and those will dictate what lines of perks you get discounts for. In this particular one, you have 2 different sets of perks that you can choose from, or rather 3. There is a general set, which is non-discounted. There is an origin set, which is discounted based on your origin, and then there is a level set, which are perks that you can get that are based on the levels that you visit. We're going to be talking about all of them in detail as we get to them, but we're going to start off just by glancing through and mentioning the different origins and why they would be useful broadly in this part of the video. The tourist, these types of jumpers are in it for the memories. They want to visit their favorite settings. They want to meet their favorite characters. They want to, in some cases, slightly modify things that maybe the actual maker of the real world fictional setting did that they didn't like, whether it is someone making it so that Harry Potter has a good life when he is with the Muggles, or it is someone making it so that Pokemon are more dangerous, things like that. The collector is someone who is really fascinated by different items and different fantastical objects they might find along their way as a jumper, whether they want to get a lightsaber or they want to get a Master Ball, that kind of thing. The creator is someone who wants to create something. They may want to make an army, they may want to build an organization, they may want to become the president of the greatest country in the world, that kind of thing. And the power gamers are people who understand, in my opinion, I'm going to go ahead and edit this a little bit versus what the actual text says, but to me, the power gamers are people who understand that in the narrative that they are a part of, they are real people and that they are in dangerous places dealing with dangerous things, and they're people who want to survive. But another fun way of looking at a power gamer is that those are jumpers who are in it for personal power. They want to face strong challenges, overcome them. They want to take the strongest perks. They will often rely on drawbacks for extra points that they can use. They are ready to be in danger and they're ready to overcome it. I like both of those takes of power gamers, and now we're actually going to go ahead and get into the perk section, which is in all likelihood going to be the longest section due to both how much content there is and also the fact that we're going to take some time to talk about the impacts of certain perks. Any further, I want to take a second to talk about what a perk is on a practical level in the context of a jump chain. A perk is something that someone spends choice points on that will follow them throughout the rest of their chain, barring certain exceptions such as gauntlets or areas where someone is somehow depowered in such a way that they lose access to their perks. But both of those things are fairly rare unless the jumper themselves is actively choosing to partake in them. So basically, the perk is the central thing that will be following you along your chain. They are the most important things, for the most part, that someone can buy using choice points. So it is because of that that this section is going to be such a long section, but I'm also going to take a bit to talk about certain things. I'm going to break even this section down into individual sections. We're going to begin by talking about the general perks, which are the first set of undiscounted perks in this particular jump, and I also want to take a beat to mention the discount system. Part of the reason why someone's origins are important in a jump chain is not just because it usually grants you memories and it gives you a context in which you exist at the beginning of your jump chain, but also because they dictate the sorts of discounts that you get. Origins will have perk trees of their own most of the time. In almost every single jump that I've seen, every origin has its own unique set of perks that you can purchase. If you have that origin, those perks are discounted by 50% for you, and in most cases, if something would cost 100, if it would be the first perk in a perk tree, or if it costs 50, then if you have the 100% discount, not 100%, if you have the 50% discount, that will enable you to get that perk for free. So for example, if you were to go over to, we will jump down for 2 seconds before going back up. If you were to have the tourist origin and you wanted to get the road goes ever on and on, that would be free for you. That is not the rule in every single jump, but that is the commonplace standard rule for jumps that have origins. In any jump where that is not the case, that will be made clear in the jump doc itself. Now, we are actually going to sit down and we're going to talk about the general perks. We're going to begin with the basic requirements perk, which is a handy little perk that gives it so that you will receive whatever special abilities, traits, backgrounds, and skills that are required for basic participation in the level you are in. If you're going to the modern occult setting, you would receive general knowledge of the supernatural in that world and enough psychic abilities to match the average person in that setting. It is worth noting that this is a very unique perk, and there's a handful of other perks that are like this that will leave you when you leave the jump, but it is partially because of that that this specific perk is actually free in the context of this particular jump. Next, you are going to get Body Like a Jumper. Also, you do not have to take free perks. Any perk that you select, it is up to you to take unless there is some sort of requirement outlined in the jump doc itself that it is required. But oftentimes, free perks are just universally handy things that are always worth getting. That said, Body Like a Jumper is a very handy perk that makes it so that if your jumper was physically disabled in some particular way or was sick in some particular way before they embarked on their jump chain, they are now no longer sick in that particular way. Mind Like a Jumper is similar. It is worth noting that in that case, it is more like you are aware of any mental conditions that you may have and you can choose to have them removed, whereas Body Like a Jumper is just a automatic heal all for any physical disabilities, that kind of thing. It's also worth noting that Body Like a Jumper and Mind Like a Jumper differ in another area, because with Body Like a Jumper, not only does this one, like Mind Like a Jumper, not go away at the end of this jump, it also makes it so that you will never deteriorate, at least in terms of your physical condition, below that of the average level of physical fitness in a human race, unless you want to do so, as long as you have enough food and water to get by. Later on, and in some cases early on, depending on the sort of jumper that you are, you may get perks that allow you to go without sleep, without food, and without water, but those perks are usually not available in low-level jumps like this. This is a very chill jump that any person who is even the average or even below average physically could theoretically survive if they were actually placed into this, although it wouldn't necessarily be easy. Now that we have gone past all of the free jumps, or all of the free perks, we are starting to get into the ones that actually cost points. The next one is Sexy and I Know It. This is an average physical appearance booster, and it does other things as well. It is all about physical and sexual health, and it makes it so that you're good looking, you're good smelling, that kind of thing. It also gives you a fertility control thing, which is not always something that is an aspect of these sorts of perks, but is something that is universally quite handy. See, a lot of different perks are not particularly text heavy. You don't need me to explain why a lot of these particular perks would be handy, but some of them are just good to have, and them being fiat backed means that nothing short of a drawback overcoming them, or something like you being in a gauntlet where you are reduced to your body mod, all of which are terms that we will be talking about either in this video or at later dates, will remove them from you. And given the universal nature of these particular perks, they will follow you no matter what form you are taking, which is a concept that we will be talking about briefly in this particular video. As you can see, there's something for basic common sense, there's something for being lucky, there's something for being motivated, there is life skills, which is actually quite handy. It gives you the ability to cook, clean, drive, do other basic things like that to a basic level of proficiency, which means that as long as you have the resources that you need to get by, you will not die or be useless on your own. There is general knowledge, which is actually a very, very, very strong perk that gives you a basic level of the historical knowledge needed to understand where you are in any jump that you go to. And if you buy the boosted version, you will have as much knowledge as a student of history would in whatever setting you go to. It never goes away, and it's not confusing and does not impair you in any way. That is actually a very powerful perk. It's something that's easy to underestimate, but if you create a character that is not particularly nerdy and they go to a lesser known franchise, or a franchise where there's lots of misconceptions about it, it would be very good for them to have this particular perk, because they would know all of the things that someone who is native to the setting and is decently knowledgeable in something like history would know. It is a perk that I highly recommend depending on the sort of jumper that you are creating. Some of the next ones: you are extra friendly, you are extroverted enough, you're immune to boredom, you are unchanging on the inside, you have control of your emotions. All just really good perks. And now we're starting to get into the ones that are a little bit more special before we delve into the origin based perks. A non-human race, this perk gives you the ability to take alt forms from this jump that would make sense in this jump forward with you going into the future. So if you go into a fantasy setting, you would be able to become an elf, and you would have an elf alt form that you could shift into at any point in the future. An alt form refers to a different type of body, it refers to a different type of species that may have different abilities that you yourself can shift into at will. It's worth noting that even though you can shift into your alt forms at any point in time that you wish, so long as there is no drawback or gauntlet thing that is keeping you in your current form, whatever your current form is for the particular jump that you're in, it is not something that happens instantaneously, and your alt forms may have abilities that your base human form does not. If you are, for example, a fire-breathing dragon in one of your alt forms, that does not mean that you can be a fire-breathing dragon as a human unless you have a perk that lets you do shapeshifting and lets you turn into a fire-breathing dragon. It is also worth noting that there are plenty of perks that only affect one particular alt form, although typically speaking, if a perk does that, it will say that in some way, shape, or form. This particular perk is really good if you know that you're going to be visiting a setting here like Mass Effect and you want to be one of the Mass Effect aliens without actually going to the mainline Mass Effect jump. You could do that. It is not something that is going to give you a tremendous amount of power, but it's going to give you a little bit more diversity in your appearance, and it's going to give you a little bit more diversity in your abilities. It's something that could be very handy depending on the next jump that you visit immediately after this. Before we end up going to the origin-based perks, we are going to talk about Try Again, which is effectively a one-up perk. A one-up perk is a perk that negates the usual rule that death is considered a chain fail and will result in your jumper usually, but not always, being sent back to the world that they were from before they became a jumper, which is usually, but not always, Earth. There are a handful of exceptions to the general rule of chain fail means being sent back to Earth, but they are extremely rare, and they will say what they are in the text of the jump doc. But instead of operating as a one-up perk usually does, which is that you kind of die and then you come back, this perk operates by negating and reversing any injury or attack or action that would otherwise result in you failing your chain. This is actually very interesting because this means that something like a scenario that would lead to a chain fail would not actually lead to a chain fail, because there are plenty of scenarios that would lead to a chain fail but do not actually kill off your character in some way if they fail. So this is actually an extremely handy perk, although plenty of people will probably rule that a chain fail achieved through a scenario fail overcomes the perk anyway. That is personally not how I would rule it, but I recognize that there are people who are going to have different rulings than me on this one. And now we actually get to talk about discounted perks, and we get to talk about origin stuff. That's very cool. Part of the video where we're going to talk about origins a little bit more in depth, I want to explain a little bit more about why they matter. When a jumper first visits a setting and when they are in the build phase of a particular jump, they have the ability to select an origin. The origin will place them in an appropriate context relative to the jump. So if you go to a Harry Potter jump and you have the ability to choose whichever house you're a part of, or you have the ability to choose your career, that origin, if you select it, will fill you up with memories, and it will give you an appropriate job and an appropriate background relative to the setting that you're visiting. These memories are important because oftentimes you are not going to be just dropped into a setting. Although those types of origins do exist, they're called drop-ins, they do not confer any additional memories or any additional things. They are just giving you a set of abilities, possibly and probably some items, and plopping you into a setting. But most of the time when you select an origin, it will be giving you appropriate memories, appropriate skills. And that is part of the reason why selecting your origin carefully is so important. It's not just a meta tool that will give you access to discounts on items, potentially companions, and perks. It is something that affects your identity in whatever setting you are going to, and is supposed to have an effect on the jumper itself, although the effect is usually not going to be something super significant. It's just going to be giving you the ability to come into a setting with some friends who know you, and I just used air quotes. They know the you relative to the setting that you're in, even if they don't know the you that is a multiversal exploring nightmare creature. So with Tourist, that is especially interesting because this is oftentimes the origin that people who want to explore settings based on nostalgia would like to visit. Whether it's the road going on, which means that it's easier for someone to find joy and satisfaction in everyday life, no matter how old they are, or seeing all the sights, which is that a perfect memory perk. It's a little bit more than that, but it's perfect basic memory, and then riding the rails to see the sights, which is an anti-butterfly effect perk. This one can be especially important, especially as your jumpers get stronger and get more willing to take risks, such as by selecting drawbacks, which can alter the settings that they're visiting, although usually drawbacks don't do that. Usually drawbacks, depending on the setting, are personal things rather than setting-wide changes, although plenty of higher level drawbacks do in fact change the setting altogether in ways that are sometimes small and sometimes not so small. But if you want to be a part of the canon plot of a particular setting, you definitely want something like Ride the Rails to see the sights, especially because plenty of origins actually place you into a pre-existing identity that is a canon character in some setting, or make it so that you are able to absorb the main character in some way and become the main character. So in the cases of perks like those, you definitely want something that would prevent you from butterfly affecting an entire plot into some radically new direction. The collector's perks are about an item's value and where an item would fit into your collection with collector's eye. Seek and ye shall find makes it easier for you to find the things that you want, and also makes it easier for you to acquire them. And harmony, which is one of the most popular perks from this particular jump, makes it so that things that clash with each other or are difficult to use together are no longer so. One of the big examples of this is that you can safely use both the dark and light sides of the Force. You can channel divine and demonic energy, and you can wield conflicting forms of magic or energy without everything coming apart or being damaged by the clashing energies, clashing things. It is something that is very, very good. Lots of people are especially fond of this perk as it makes it possible for people to safely do things that they would otherwise not be able to safely do, such as use an ability that would harm you, such as an ability that makes you stronger but at the expense of your own health. Different people will also have different readings on how that affects certain status effects and certain abilities that would normally cost your health to use. But for the most part, the most common reading that I've seen is that people will use this perk as a way to do things like have their characters enter rages that would normally hurt their bodies, or have their characters have items that normally require their own life force to use without requiring the life force to use. It is a very powerful perk, and it is the first area where I want to talk about what is known as a capstone perk. Capstone perks are perks that exist at the end of a line or tree of perks, and they are often significantly powerful. There are plenty jumps that offer what are known as capstone boosters, and capstone boosters are special perks that are not the most expensive perks in a particular jump, but are usually undiscounted and will allow you to bolster the effects of your capstone perks in a significant and dramatic way. This particular jump does not offer capstone boosters, but the capstones here are still very intense. The creators perks are ones that give you a font of inspiration, making you immune to writer's block and things like that. It will allow you to bolster the appearance of something that you make, and also make it so that you're very good at public relations. And finally, the capstone perk for this particular origin is the function perk. This perk makes it so that the things that you make will always function as they're made to function. So this is a very interesting one, because this means that a sword that you create will not dull or break over time, barring something truly extreme. The art movement that you inspire will never become derivative or too mainstream, barring deliberate action on your part or some other party's part. Your creations are yours, and they work the way that you want them to work. This is a very handy perk if you are a creator type jumper, and many jumpers, even if they don't start off as creator types, eventually become them, because creation perks are so common and are also so handy. It is very, very good for someone to have the ability to create something, and for that ability itself to be fiat backed, because that means that you can create something using an alternate universe's rules of physics, as long as you have the appropriate perks that make it possible for you to do so, which obviously is very, very cool. It's very neat to be able to do something like create a wand from a setting like Harry Potter, or staff from a setting like the Elder Scrolls, without being in Harry Potter or the Elder Scrolls. The final origin in this particular jump is the Power Gamer origin, which is personally my favorite. It's definitely the most universally handy in my experience, especially if you are creating baby jumpers who are starting off with no particular powers. This is just a very handy way to give them the tools they might need to survive. The first perk here is named Oh the Possibilities, and it makes it so that you are especially clever and creative when it comes to powers and when it comes to things that you own, and also very creative when it comes to figuring out how to overcome weaknesses of those things. The next one is a training booster named Hard Work Pays Dividends. Training boosters are special and especially powerful perks that make it so that the results of your training and your studying are amplified. The meta-narrative reason for these perks is to make it so that someone who is only in a setting for 10 years has the opportunity to become just as skilled at something as a native to the setting who's been training for it their entire lives. Logically speaking, it makes sense for you to assume that someone who's only in the Star Wars universe for 10 years would probably not have a chance to become as skilled with a lightsaber as Mace Windu or Obi-Wan Kenobi. But with these kinds of perks, that levels that playing field. These are extremely important perks that I highly recommend for a number of jumpers. And the final perk in this particular perk line is known as I Have the Power, and makes it so that you have a much higher threshold of skill when it comes to the sorts of things that you get. So if you go to Chronicle, which as I've mentioned in other videos is a superhero movie from 2012 wherein some teenage boys become telekinetic, that would make it so that you have a much higher starting level of skill and have the ability to gain skill much more easily. It is not a direct training boost, but it is Also not an uncapper in the sense that it makes it so that your potential is unlimited. It's effectively a mini uncapper that makes it so that you have a much higher threshold and ceiling of skill when it comes to having supernatural abilities. As you can see, now we are back in the undiscounted perk section. These perks are based off of themes and things that you might see in a particular level, but you gain them and can use them the instant that you purchase them and then begin your time in the jump itself rather than waiting until you are in the level to be able to use these particular perks for the first time. Slice of Life offers two simple but handy perks. One that gives you the ability to have one real world profession of your choice. It can be taken multiple times for a different profession each time. It doesn't make you one of the very best in the world, but it will make you a highly skilled, well respected professional. The next one is a simple charisma perk. All it does is make it so that you have no difficulty connecting with other people. You're a good listener and an all around good buddy as long as you want to be. The next one is Survival, and Survival has another two simple but undoubtedly handy perks. All of these perks will be costing 100 choice points unless I state otherwise, and if there is an area that I miss where it says otherwise, that just means that it costs that number, and all of these are undiscounted. But even if you wanted to purchase every single one of these, that would only be 2,000 choice points, which is more than your initial threshold, but you can take drawbacks if you want to be able to get to purchase all of these. The next two are Eagle Scout and Lone Survivor. Eagle Scout makes it so that you're very good at surviving in both wilderness and urban settings, and makes it so that you're lucky and talented when it comes to finding what it is that you need to get by. Lone Survivor makes it so that your social skills do not degrade no matter how long you spend by yourself. This is particularly handy if you are ruling that your jumper is in fact a normal human. People's social skills are subject to downgrade over the course of time if they do not hone them, just like every other person's skills in every other area are. And this also makes it so that you do not suffer any trauma or difficulty resulting from isolation or loneliness. There are a handful of jumps where this is going to be exceptionally handy. One of the big ones I can think of is Generic Island Castaway, which is a windfish style jump that makes it so that you are on an island in the middle of the sea, and unless you do specific things or take specific options, you are the only human there. One of the only ways to overcome this is through companions or through items that you import that would bring other people with you. So as you can see, there are a number of jumps where something like Lone Survivor would be incredibly handy. The next setting is the horror setting, and it has Run Like Hell and Be Not Afraid. Run Like Hell makes it so that you're very good at getting the heck out of dodge, and Be Not Afraid makes it so that you're immune to mind bending or sanity destroying effects, and are also immune to any form of spiritual corruption. That can be incredibly handy depending on the setting that you are visiting. If you go to something like Warhammer, or if you go to any other setting where magic comes at some sort of cost, or some sort of supernatural ability comes at some sort of sanity cost, this is a remarkable perk to have. The next setting is the military setting, which gives you advanced infantry training and military occupational speciality. Advanced military training makes it so that you've been through the equivalent of advanced infantry school and you are a highly trained soldier as well as a highly conditioned one. This knowledge updates moving forward. Many jumps will offer perks that have knowledge that updates per setting and will offer items that update in some way per setting. This particular jump is well known for things like that and makes it so that your knowledge is never not relevant, your item is never not useful, and there are different items and different perks that do that in different ways. That's just one of them. The next perk in this setting is the military occupational speciality, and that is an MOS. That means, much to a lot of people's surprise, being a soldier is not just doing PT drills and practicing shooting all day. just about every soldier, at least in the American military, has some sort of mundane job that occupies a lot of their day-to-day business, especially if they are not an especially high-ranking soldier, and their MOS is that job. It makes it so that you have training in that particular thing, whether you are a cook or a truck driver or a map maker. It makes it so that you have that knowledge and that training, and that will follow you in some way per jump / per level that you go to. The next one is Modern Adventure, which also, like all the other ones, has 2 perks. It has the Quick and the Dead, and it has Sherlock Scan. The Quick and the Dead makes it so that you are very, very quick. Your reaction speeds peak human. Your thought processes and all of your instinctual things are 3 times as fast as they otherwise would be. Sherlock Scan makes it so that when you are looking in a particular place, the parts that are important or relevant to you will stand out, calling your attention to them, and they will not distract you from other things in the setting. Sherlock Scan refers to an ability that some variations of Sherlock have, where he can just eye a room and things that matter, that are relevant to whatever mystery he's solving, immediately stand out to him. They don't distract him, but he's able to hone in on them instantaneously. The Superhero Jump has a pair of basic but very handy perks. It has Fist of Justice, which is a martial arts perk that lets you select a form of martial art that you are now an expert in. It obviously won't let you stand up to a truly inhuman opponent, but if you are a master of karate and someone is trying to mug you, you have a decent chance of coming out on top unless they have a gun or something. And Secondary Superpowers is a perk that makes it so that any power or ability that you acquire, no matter how you got it, you also receive necessary secondary superpowers to make it function properly. For example, if you have super strength, your super strength won't recoil and hurt you in some way unless you actually go over your limits. If you have super speed, you have the thought processes necessary for you to be able to react in time as you are moving at your high speed. If you have flight, you are immune to the effects that would happen to the human body if it rose too high, too fast, that kind of thing. Modern Occult has Psychic Intuition and Screw the Devil. Psychic Intuition gives you a tiny bit of psychic potential. It's not anything as great as prolific future sight, or the ability to remove your mind and your senses from your body and project them somewhere else, but it is a little bit of a stronger gut instinct. You're a good judge of character, and you can sense the presence of the supernatural, which is great in a setting where ghosts may not be the most corporeal things, but are definitely evidently real and can hide themselves. They would have a little bit of a harder time hiding themselves from you specifically. Screw the Devil is a genuinely remarkable perk that should probably cost more than 100 points. It makes it so that you are completely immune to any form of possession. Outside control might still be able to influence you, but you are the only actual person in your body, mind, and soul, and you're going to stay that way. You can let other things in, but you can also expel them with but a thought. So it is just a very handy psychic perk that makes you a far trickier opponent to deal with if your opponents are something like demons and supernatural that can possess you, or angels in some form of media, including supernatural, that can possess you, that kind of thing. The last 3 jumps also, or the last 3 levels in this particular jump, also only have 2 perks each. Historical has Symbol Convenience, which makes it so that you no longer have to deal with a handful of things that make life in the past a little bit more inconvenient. Your clothing, personal equipment, and body are always clean, and you never have to go to the bathroom. This can be toggled on or off at will. And Student of War, which is just a tactician's perk, it makes it so that you are good at logistics, organization, strategy, and tactics, and effectively makes it so that you are the sort of person who can lead from behind and do it well in the context of a military campaign. The next one is Fantasy, which has 2 perks as well, Cantrips and Class Skills. Cantrips makes it so that you can do lots of the little basic level 0, and I just air quotes, things that some D&D characters can do. It is keyed specifically to 3.5e cantrips, which are little things like cleaning your clothing, creating small orbs of light, and are not usually as directly as offensive as 5e cantrips tend to be. Plenty of 5e's cantrips are things like firing bolts of energy, and if I remember correctly, There's like a handful of offensive cantrips in 3.5e, but they're not nearly as commonplace. And then the next perk is class skills, which makes it so that you have a specialized sets of skills that fit in occupation or class of your choice. This can be anything from being a healer, such as by being a cleric or being a monk, to being a little bit of a sneaky thief by being a rogue or a ranger. And finally, we are going to science fiction, which has my personal favorite of all of the setting-based perks in this particular jump, universal translation, and it has engineer. Universal translation makes it so that you can understand, speak, read, write, and think any language you have ever encountered, as long as you have the necessary body parts. So, for example, you cannot communicate using pheromones to the same extent that a bee would be able to, but if you heard someone speaking Arabic, you would be able to speak, think, read, and write in Arabic. This is fully retroactive, and that is remarkable because lots of human beings in the real world will have encountered a range of languages over the course of their lives, but may not remember every single one. For example, most people living in a decently populated city will have probably heard languages like English, Spanish, Russian, Japanese, Chinese, and all sorts of languages like that, and they will be able to use those languages now fully fluently. Engineer makes it so that once you know how to use a piece of technology, you can figure out how to fix it. It doesn't provide you with the tools or the materials needed to do so, just the actual knowledge, but even just the actual knowledge can be genuinely remarkable in the right situation and in the right circumstances. Now we're going to be talking about the items. Items section of this particular jump. Items are objects that, in the context of a jump chain, you spend choice points on, and they gain something that is referred to as fiat backing. I have referred to this term before, but fiat backing means something different in the context of perks than it does in the context of items, although there is similarity and overlap. In the context of a perk or an alt form, fiat backing refers to the ability of that perk or alt form's functions to function in another setting independent of the physics and that sort of thing that would otherwise impede their ability to function. There is a similar effect on items, but in addition to that, an item that is fiat backed is guaranteed to be restored to working condition at the end of a particular jump at the very latest. Many items that have fiat backing go steps further than that, which are specified in their descriptions, that will talk about how long it takes an item like this to reappear, if it ever reappears before the jump is over, or things about it that matter that it has because of its fiat backing properties, which make it so that it can work anywhere. For example, most computers that are fiat backed have unlimited battery, although this isn't always the case, and usually if they have unlimited battery, they will say so in their description. This particular section of the jump dock has two subsections. It has the general item section, which are not discounted, and then every origin has two items of its own. For the origins, you get one of the items for free, and then you get a discount on the other one. And additionally, this is probably going to be the first time that anyone who's new to jump chains has heard this term, you get a stipend in this section. And with the stipend, you are able to use 200 choice points in this section and this section alone, and that is even if you've already used your 1,000 choice points in the other sections that you would be able to use them in, which in this particular jump is just perks. Most jumps have companions as well. This one does not. So we're going to begin talking about the items. The first item is the bare necessities item, which is a simple thing that gives you a life set up and waiting for you. The jump will provide you with a job that you're capable of doing that works with your background, and the schedule will be flexible enough that you can work the hours that you want to work, so you can get the pay that you want to get without actually having to interfere with your jump activities. Because the fact of the matter is that most people who go on jump chains are not looking stoked at being an insurance broker 40 hours a week. they're going to want to do other things, but they're also going to want to have enough time to get by, because especially in your first couple of jumps, you are ultimately someone who is, in most respects, only a little bit better than average people at a lot of different things. It's true that you may be super good looking and you may be omnilingual effectively, but that does not make it so that you are some sort of ultra genius and that you have unlimited money. But that's only if you take the free version of this. If you invest choice points in this, you are actually able to get a yearly income that places you at a comfortable upper middle class without needing to work an actual job, and it's only 50 choice points. And you could use the stipend on it, so you could really do that. It is also worth noting that there's other tiers that grant you a little bit more in different things, typically granting you extra money. It is worth noting that this is something that does follow you in each jump in ways that will make it readily accessible to you without causing any bizarre complications. There will be a logical, in the context of whatever setting you're in, explanation for why you have the money that you have, basically. The next couple of items are really simple things. You have your own mental soundtrack that you can turn on or off at will if you decide to invest some points in it, and you can also share it with others if you want. You have an unlimited supply of one type of food, which can be any type of food. You have a collection of the pictures of the people that you love and would miss the most from home. So basically you have a photo album of things from back in either your real life or the new memories that you make as you go on your adventures, that kind of thing. You have as many clothes and as many types of clothes as you want. I really like this particular item because the fact of the matter is that clothing is an important part of visiting a lot of different settings and is something that is often underlooked. I think it's really neat that there's an item here that does this. You have a fiat-backed pet if you want to get one. You have a fiat-backed smartphone, which is actually very important. This jump phone will never die. It will always repair itself. It's immune to malware and hacking and always has a signal, which is incredibly important. Now, that does not mean that if you go to a setting like Game of Thrones, you can just call anyone whenever you want because they won't have a phone. But this makes it so that there's lots of little things that you don't need to worry about. And in fact, that is the purpose of all of these items. It's always about taking care of little things that would otherwise complicate life, making it so that you can have a more idealized life in a way that is well suited to you based on the sorts of items that you purchase. The laptop is very similar to the smartphone. It is a very powerful phone. It's also worth noting, I said phone, but I meant laptop. It's also worth noting that, like the smartphone, this will always upgrade as long as you invested the proper amount of points into it. It will always upgrade to match the best equivalent device in each new jump. So if you go from the setting of, let's say, Harry Potter, and you start off in the year 1994, where mobile phones, if they existed in any capacity and were any level of commonplace, were very not good compared to later mobile phones. And then you went to Chronicle, another setting I've mentioned, which starts off in 2012 and would end in 2022, assuming you were there for the standard decade. Then you are able to get a much better phone without having to invest any money or any points. The next couple of items are a little bit funkier. There's franchise, which gives you something like a comic or a cartoon or movies that tell stylized versions of your adventures. They will update at the end of each jump to include the events in them. You'll be able to watch them in any medium that you like, in any media style that you like. There's a souvenir, which is something special from a particular level in this jump. For example, if you wanted to go to the superhero jump and you wanted to get something simple like a sort of shrink ray or something, you would still be able to use it. Very handy. And then there is a civilian vehicle which exists of your choice that exists in the real world. You can use it and it's fiat backed to have all the really cool stuff. This is a very handy one if you do not have access to something like super speed. So if you get a car, you have a car that always works, that is always fueled, that doesn't need to be maintained. Very handy, very basic, low level quality of life item. Now we are going to be talking about the origin based items. Okay, so now we are in the origin specific items. These items are very intriguing. I'm hoping that people will like them as much as I do. We're beginning with the tourist, which only has 2 items. In fact, all of the items in the section are only 2 items per origin. Its 2 items are camera and security pass. You get one of them for free based off of your origin, and then you get the other one at a discounted cost of 50 choice points as opposed to 100. So with the camera, you have a sort of mental camera, and with it, in any time that you do something memorable, noteworthy, or just want to remember a moment in the future, you'll get a snapshot of the moment framed at the right size and just the right angle. You can always get more copies if you want from different angles, and you can even get full video and audio for an extra 100 choice points. The next item is the security badge. This name badge will allow you to bypass any security. It does not create any background records or add your name to any sort of list. It just provides you with a perfect fake credential. This is something that is perfectly handy if you want to get into a press only area at something like a convention, or if you want to get into something that is low security. It's not going to get you past any sort of supernatural security measure, but in any sort of mundane world, in any sort of mundane context, it's the perfect item. If the next set is the collector's items, you have the catalog and the stamp of fiat approval. The catalog will allow you to figure out when items that you are going to want to acquire are going to appear. It does this by giving you magazines, catalogs, professional journals, and other periodicals, and that will detail the existence of the objects you would want in the world you are in. It's worth noting that this is keyed to your desires, and it knows you on some levels better than you know yourself. So anything that you would be interested in that would appear in this particular setting, you can figure out its location using this item. Now, that does not mean that you are going to have a super easy time trying to go get it. In fact, this is effectively a sort of adventure bait item where it is going to give you the little bit of information you need to initiate an adventure to go and get something rather than allow you to go get the thing itself. The next item is the stamp of fiat approval. This is a ability to apply a mark to any one item of your choice that was not purchased from a jump dock. The item is now fully fiat backed and will function anywhere, as well as being restored at 24 hours after it's destroyed. This mark can be removed and placed on a different item, but you can only do that once per jump. It's also worth noting that this doesn't let you take anything from a level in this jump that you could not already take with you, which is an important limitation, but effectively this item is something that gets better once you leave this setting. We're going to see lots of those kinds of things over the course of the jumps that I'm going to review. A very prominent example of this is in the generic cubicle jump, which is a jump that lets you have an office job for a decade, which I know for a lot of people sounds like a living hell. I really like this jump, and I think it's a very good, very solid early jump. One of the items is the Severance Pay item, and the way that that particular item works is the amount of money that you would be making the day that the jump ends and you go to your next setting is going to follow you, and it's going to be paid out to you in increments identical to the way that it was paid out to you while you were in the jump. So if you worked a job where you got paid monthly, you would get that amount of money monthly no matter how much it was that you were making for the rest of your chain. I think that's an incredible item. It is a free item in the jump, and it is something that will eventually become obsolete as your jumper becomes more powerful, but it is absolutely a game changer early on in a jump chain, as a jumper is in the baby stages where they're little more than just a regular human being with maybe some extra abilities. There's lots of items like that which are just really handy to have and that I personally really like. The next set of items that we're going to be looking at are the creator's items. It is the workshop and the simulation system. With the workshop, you have access to a well-equipped, high-quality workshop, laboratory, art studio, or whatever other facility is required for you to create the sorts of things that you create. After the jump, these will be connected to your warehouse, And we are going to be talking about a jumper's warehouse in a later video. A warehouse is a very important concept for lots of jumpers, even though I personally tend not to use warehouses with my jumpers. Tools and basic stuff are supplied for the workshop, no matter where it is, no matter what kind of workshop it is, but special or unique resources have to be acquired by you. The next one is a simulation system. It is a system that can perfectly simulate and test anything you design. It's effectively something that makes it so that your item does not need to be tested on the field. It can be tested from the safety of your own home and can allow you to make any sort of necessary fixes, any sorts of necessary edits without having to watch your product fail in real time. Obviously, there are plenty of perks that make this item superfluous or just superficial, but for a lot of people, especially early on in a jump chain, it's a very nice item to have. The final sets of items that we're going to be talking about are the Power Gamers items. It is Jumper Total Fitness and the Ultimate Book of Brain Teasers. Ultimate Book of Unlimited Brain Teasers. I messed that up twice in a row. Let's go. That's an item that I need. Jumper Total Fitness is a special workout gym area that later on will be connected to your warehouse after your jump. And these gyms / these facilities are incredible. They are supernaturally guaranteed to provide a good, safe workout for you no matter how great you are physically. If you could lift a planet, this would still allow you to strain and test your muscles in some way. It includes facilities for safely and effectively testing any of your superpowers, such as if you wanted to see just how hot your heat vision could burn, you have a place in this special gym complex where you can do that without putting yourself or anyone else at risk. Really rad item. The Ultimate Book of Ultimate Brain Teasers, said it right that time, is a book that contains an unlimited number of puzzles, games, riddles, and other sorts of mentally taxing and mentally strenuous activities that are fun and will boost your mental abilities. And by mental abilities, it's not super clear what it means here, but the way that I've always read it is that this is a way to boost your supernaturally attuned to your mind powers, such as things like telekinesis and future sight, as well as boost your actual intelligence. Although if other people have other readings, I completely understand that. We get to talk about drawbacks. Drawbacks are very fun. They are challenges that a jumper can willingly take on, or depending on the particular nature of your chain, not so willingly take on. But generally, most people are probably going to have the reading that a jumper is the person who not only selects their build, but they also select their drawbacks, so that way they know what they're in for, unless they take a drawback that erases their memory of the meta nature of this, which exist but are not super common. They will be able to take on challenges that will alter the world and will alter their own conditions and their own bodies in different ways to make it more challenging for them, but in exchange, they get extra points that they can use to purchase things throughout the actual jump dock. There are a lot of different kinds of drawbacks, and there's lots of different levels of permanence of drawbacks. This particular jump is fairly lax when it comes to drawbacks, and I'm not going to take an enormous amount of time to go through the minutia of this section as I have with the other sections, because the other sections have offered things that will stick with your jumper moving forward once they leave this particular jump, assuming they succeed in the jump and they get to keep the things they bought here. But this section does not linger with them. Whether it is the general drawbacks, all of which do linger throughout the jump itself, but then no further, or the level specific drawbacks, which only affect and only alter a single level, these drawbacks are not things that stick with you throughout your chain. If you take a drawback from here, it is not going to affect you 3 jumps from now. So that is something that is worth knowing. Not every single jump, but many jumps have different rules that talk about the intensity and talk about how hard it is to reverse the effects of a drawback or to overcome the effects of a drawback. This particular jump is very chill when it comes to this. It makes it so that there's no limit on how many drawbacks you could take. If you wanted the maximum number of points you could possibly get, you could take every single drawback and just have to deal with that. And it also makes it so that once a drawbacks challenge has been overcome, there is not going to be a new instance of that challenge that is scaled to you that will follow you throughout the level you're in or throughout the jumps altogether. It is something that can be overcome and can be overdressed in some way, at least most of the time. And I think that that's very nice because lots of drawbacks will make it so that they linger throughout the length of a particular jump. And it's also worth noting that there are drawbacks here that have significant effects on the jump, such as the long run, which makes it so that each level is a full decade rather than just a year. That is something that would make it so that this jump takes a full 100 years to complete, which I know to a lot of people might have you worrying about the sort of impact that is going to have on your jumper, because your jumper is only sort of immortal and is not fully immortal just yet. But don't worry, because every single level in this particular jump is a unique instance of a reality. So when you are there, you are that specific age, whatever age that is for that specific level. When you go to another level, you snap back to the appropriate age that you would be. So if you started off as a 19-year-old person in one level, when you go to the next level, you are not 29. You are not going to have to deal with the impact of your age on your body. But that said, you can see certain things here that are linger throughout that make it more complicated, and also you can see certain things that are common tropes that will occur in lots of different drawbacks in the future. You can see the power loss, which makes it so that any level perks you have purchased are only available in that level as opposed to lasting throughout the jump itself. You can make it so that you don't have one of the handy perks, the basic requirements perks. You can make it so that you don't have any of the events of any levels except for the one that you're in. Lots of different stuff. And then you get to see the actual drawbacks that are specific to each level. As you can see, there's the homeless drawback, which would make it so that you start off in a homeless shelter with just the clothes on your back and with no money. From that point, you have to work to overcome the challenges that would face you, and you have to figure out your own way out. But because of the nature of drawbacks in this specific jump, once you overcome that challenge, you are not automatically going to be placed back into a new, worse version of it. Basically, once you are homeless, if you stop being homeless and you just would normally get to keep your house for whatever reason, if you would have a job that allows you to pay off your bills, or if you have money that would allow you to pay off your bills, you get to keep that house, at least for this level. And then any other things that would affect your housing situation in future levels take hold. Basically, this is a one and done dealing with homelessness. The next sort of one is survival. You have a disability, such as you have for example, you have a busted knee that makes it so that walking is very difficult for you to do and it's very painful. For the time that you are in this level, you're going to have to deal with that, but if you manage to get it fixed, boom, it's fixed. It's going to be like that all the way down here. There are a range of different drawbacks that have different effects, but it is very nice to see that all of these are things that you can overcome or at least endure. None of this is going to be something that is just absolutely game changing for a year. And now we have made it to the final sections of this particular jump doc. Now that we've finished reading the drawbacks, some jump docs will have sections after drawbacks. It's very commonplace for scenarios to be placed after drawbacks, although there's plenty of exceptions there. But now we are in the end choices section. So now you get to choose what to do next. You can go home, which normally would give you everything that you got so far on your chain, as long as you select it rather than being forced home because of a chain fail. And you get to go back to whatever planet or whatever Earth you're from and just keep your cool stuff. Or you can continue on, which is the option that most people will be selecting, wherein they get to go to another setting and they get to do this another time. This is actually the final phase of a jump, as opposed to like the earlier thing that I was saying, where there's typically two phases. There's the build phase, and then there's the phase where you are actually in the jump. This is the final section, and some jumps, this section actually matters a lot. This is one of those sections because you get rewards. As a final reward, you get these two things. You get instant access and you get body mod reward. Instant access is a very fun thing because you can send objects directly into your warehouse, and you can automatically retrieve things from your warehouse. For example, if you have a fiat-backed gun that you normally don't carry on you, but you have instant access, you can instantly draw it into your hand no matter where you are, and you can instantly send it back, such as if you have just done a crime and the police are about to catch you and you don't want them to find the weapon that you used to commit the crime, or if you just saved someone and you don't want them to know how you saved them, so you instantly send your object back. Now, we are going to hear, for one of the first times, a super important term called the body mod. So, this item right here is the body mod reward. And what it does is it makes it so that all perks and items from this jump are, aside from basic requirements, now fiat backed, and they have become a part of your body mod. That is very important because fiat backing something does not give it immunity to drawbacks or to what happens to you when you go through a gauntlet. But with this, they do have immunity to those things. The items and perks that you purchased in this particular jump will now linger, even if you are depowered in a drawback level way. So even if you forfeit all of your abilities and all of your items for the sake of getting more points in a normal jump, or you go to a gauntlet and you are sent back to your most basic form, you will still have all of your stuff from this particular jump. All of the cool stuff that you bought, all of the items aside from the basic requirements thing as mentioned in the text, you will be able to use. If you have the perk that makes it so that training is amplified for you, you will still have that. If you have the perk that makes it so that you can cast 3.5e cantrips, or the perk that makes it so that you can speak any language that you see or encounter in some way, as long as you have the necessary anatomy, you can still do all that. And I think that's really rad. That is a very, 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 very good reward, and it's a very compelling reason to visit this jump as your first jump, as opposed to the traditional first jump, which is Quicksilver's Pokemon Trainer jump. Although that is also a very good jump that I highly recommend. The last two sections are the notes, which talk about different things that the author couldn't include in the regular jump doc itself, whether it would be fourth wall breaking, or just some observations, or just some quippy stuff, or even just some links for people who are interested in a source in a normal jump, not in this particular jump. And then there is also the change log. A very common thing for lots of different jump docs is that people will include the change log, and the change log is a list of changes that are made as the jump doc is updated, whether it is in its pre-infancy stage, which lots of people do. I'm fond of releasing jumps before they are fully jumpable, so that way I can access the sort of jump chain hive mind and take in suggestions and figure out how best to incorporate other people's thoughts into my jumps. But not every person does that. This particular jump was released in its fully jumpable stage, which means that it has all of the basic elements of a jump doc. It has a beginning, it has perks, it has items, it has drawbacks, it has end choices. But most jumps do not have end choices that are as significant as this one, because a lot of jumps don't offer rewards just for completing them. In fact, usually in order to get a reward for completing a jump, you have to complete scenarios, which are little quests that you can take on in universe that would enable you to do cooler stuff and would enable you to get special rewards, whether it's extra points or items and powers that you otherwise could not purchase. There's lots of cool stuff. But this particular jump has been through a number of revisions, and each one of those revisions and what those revisions entail are noted in the changelog. As you can see, this is a very thorough document. This was a much longer video than I originally anticipated it being, although I'm not that surprised that my initial estimation of how long this video would be in terms of viewing time was a little off. I knew that I wanted to talk about stuff in enough detail that this video would take a little bit of time, but I'm still so excited that you were able to come here. I'm planning to have videos where I talk about what jump chains are broadly, and where I break down specific elements or even specific tropes that someone might see in different jump docs and in the jump chain communities themselves, and also where I talk about other jump docs. I'm very excited to have talked about this one. I'm probably going to talk about Welcome to Vaporwave City, which is the jump doc that was my first fully completed jump doc, and to this day remains my only fully completed jump doc, although I've had other jump docs that are jumpable, they just aren't fully completed just yet. But it was a very fun thing that I made based off of a choose your own adventure that I really liked, and that I wanted to get people in the jump chain community excited about. So I went to the trouble of making it myself. I made it supermarket style, which means that there are no origins. I didn't quite do it as the original supermarket style, which is where just about every perk is 100 choice points, and if you use a discount token you get a perk for free. I made it so that there were tiers to both items and also to the perks themselves, and in some cases I have plans to change and to edit and to update future elements of that one. I've also made a jump doc for the Sanguinarchs, which are one of the 5 types of ascendants that are created by a member of the Choose Your Own Adventure community over on Questionable Questing and on Reddit named Troy X. Troy is a good friend of mine. I absolutely adore the man, and he is an excellent creator who has done a range of different adventure things, and I've always been such a big fan of his work that I've written stories inspired off of it, and that I've just been a long-time member of his particular community. It was actually Troy who inadvertently introduced me to both broader Choose Your Own Adventures and also to jump chains and also to the Essence meta, all of which are things that I plan to talk about at great length in future videos. So as you can see, there's a lot of different thoughts running through my head, and I'm just so excited to be here and to be talking with you all. I hope that you enjoyed this somewhat significant deep dive into what a jump doc looks like. I know that I made a very interesting choice by choosing this specific doc as my first one, but the fact of the matter is that the generic first jump is a fairly popular jump doc, and also it is so well designed and has a lot of the things that people will see in other jump docs that I thought it was a good jumping off point. I do think that in the future I have plans to tackle jump docs that are both more complicated and also far simpler than this one, so I'm hoping that in the future not all of my videos will be quite this lengthy as I talk about this. But until then, I hope that you all have a truly wonderful day. I'm so happy that we could spend time together, and if you are new to my community and you're liking what you're seeing and you want to see more of my stuff, I hope you'll consider subscribing. It definitely helps me. I absolutely want to make a living as a content creator someday, and subscriptions are a very important part of that. They're also free for you, and they don't cost you any more time and energy than the time and energy it takes to click on a button. I hope that you have an absolutely wonderful day. Bye-bye, everyone.